Welcome to the Kellfire Show. I'm Dr. Kelly Barron, and I'm so excited today to have Suzannah Weiss on. She is a writer and a psychotherapist focused on sexuality, relationships, and women's empowerment. She is quite the author. She has been published in over 9,000 articles, including notable names such as the New York Times, Glamour, the Washington Post, and New York Magazine. Her work has been discussed on names such as The Today Show and The View, and she's been quoted in publications such as Cosmopolitan, Healthline, Women's Day, Forbes, and there was so much more. I couldn't even fit it on here. But she is also the author of Subjectified and her new book that just came out in September, Eve's Blessing, Uncovering the Lost Pleasure Behind Female Pain. So welcome, Suzanne. I was so excited to have you on. I was so excited. When I read the title of this book, Eve's Blessing, I was like, okay, I got to get this. This looks fantastic. So welcome to the show, and just tell us a little bit more about you that I didn't fit in there, and then I'd love to hear more about your book.
Yeah, you basically covered it. I'm also a psychotherapist and sex therapist specializing in neurodiversity, sexual trauma, sexual dysfunction, body image, and psychedelic integration. And I am a sex educator as well and a birth doula, and I'm very passionate about helping women live lives of more pleasure and less pain and help everybody live a shame-free life free from body shame and sexual shame.
I think that's great. I think it's such a big part of our lives, and it's something we don't talk about, and we certainly don't seek help often enough for it. And if we just did, it would change our view of who we are, and how we handle things in life and what we think about ourselves. Just getting in touch with that. So having someone like you out there that we can go to and not feel embarrassed or feel shameful is I think, well, it's a blessing, such as Eve's Blessing. So tell us a little bit more about the book.
Yeah, so this book is about many different things. It covers the normalization of women's pain and what I call women's pleasurelessness, the idea that it is normal for sex to have little pleasure, or for women to have sex without an orgasm, or for sex to be primarily for men, as well as the idea that it's normal for women to have pain during experiences such as first-time sex, menstruation, PMS, even childbirth. So I interviewed women, for instance, who had orgasmic births and ecstatic births, women who have positive experiences with their periods, women who have great sex lives and what I call the orgasmic life, where you prioritize pleasure in your daily life in and outside the bedroom, and women who overcame chronic illness. And my goal is just to show that so much more is possible for women's lives than we have been taught. The world, for a number of reasons, normalizes women's pain because of a lack of research on women's health, because doctors are often not prioritizing women's health, because of lifestyle factors such as the diet we eat, such as the chemicals in our household products. There are many aspects of modern life that are not set up for women to really enjoy their bodies, but there is a possibility for what I call a return to paradise before Eve's curse, where women can lead the life free from this curse of pain, where they can actually experience their bodies as sources of pleasure, sexual pleasure, sensual pleasure, rather than expecting to be in pain every month and throughout their lives in childbirth, sex, etc. And yeah, I interviewed many women and also told my own story struggling with chronic Lyme disease and with sexual issues, and just the self-confidence that came from being able to overcome that and see my body as a positive place to reside in.
Where do you think the idea, I mean, I'm sure there's endless theories on this, but Where do you think the idea came, or when did we start becoming conditioned as women to just accept that there's going to be pain in sex, or that it wasn't supposed to be, pleasurable for us, or we weren't allowed to, look forward to the pleasure and embrace it? What did it just evolve through society? Is it because we were always the caregivers? What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it comes from both what we're taught and what we're not taught. I mean, growing up, I tell my own story of just limited sex education, and Peggy Orestein has a good TED talk about this, how like they separate boys and girls often in sex ed, and boys learn about erections and wet dreams and ejaculations, which are physically, if not always psychologically pleasurable, whereas women learn about menstruation, pregnancy. There's almost like scare tactics, like your body is vulnerable, you need to protect it, and you'll likely be in pain every month. And I remember I learned about periods in a way that was kind of scary. A peer just told me it's when your thing bleeds and you grow hair there. And so I imagine like a medical emergency, like you rush to the hospital and you wake up with pubic hair. like, and I guess I didn't have anyone talking to me about it at home, and I didn't have, many people saying sex should be pleasurable. That was also really scary. Like, I just talked to friends about it, and I had one friend say, yeah, it was painful, but I did it just to get it over with. And there's not education about how you can prevent pain through foreplay, through, exploring penetration on your own first. And so, yeah, and I think a lot of this dates back to the curse put on Eve, and this idea that women are being punished. It's not always explicit. Even for people who are not religious, they may learn these ideas, but many religious communities still refer to menstruation as the curse, and there's just this unspoken belief that being female means dealing with pain. And it's time that we change that, I think.
I agree. I grew up I went to Catholic school, so you can imagine what my view was of sex and sexuality growing up. And it was presented more as a function, like something we needed to do to get to the babies, but never in a way that was, like you said, like it's taught to boys or explained to boys that this is a pleasurable act and it's exciting and something to look forward to. And I grew up I was born in 71, so in the 80s, so many of my friends would say that exact thing, that, I just wanted to get it over with. I heard it was going to hurt really bad, and I just wanted to be done with it. And there was very few like special moments or special experiences with it. How do you then see, do you have clients, is probably the better way to say it, do you have clients now that are, say, in more in the midlife, in the 40s and 50s now, who kind of kept the same view as they grew up and had children and are married, and are now discovering, because it's being talked about a little bit more, are now discovering that, hey, we're sexual beings, and it's so fundamental to who we are? And how do you coach women into that mindset when they for so long have not been in it?
Yeah, I work with a lot of women who have either low sex drive or pain during sex, and it connects to having negative experiences in the past, having sex that felt like an obligation, especially women who were partnered with men and felt like sex was to please the man. And often the body communicates to someone that that isn't what they want by shutting down, by a low sex drive, or even by vaginismus, which is when someone tenses up at the moment of penetration and they experience pain at penetration. And so it's really important for women, if they have been taught in some way or another that either they're not a sexual being, or sex is just to please the man, or it's not about their pleasure, to take a step back and explore on their own, possibly through masturbation, and figure out what they actually like for themselves. And my book, Subjectified, is about this, about how women can more be the subjects rather than the objects in sexual encounters, and just be led by their own desire rather than a partner's. And so I recommend women actually hit pause on their sex lives if they feel like they're going through the motions at all, or like it's their wifely duty or whatever they've been taught, and explore by themselves through masturbation, potentially through reading erotica or watching ethical porn, and just get in touch with what your fantasies are, what your desires are, and then share that with your partner and realize sex is not always penetration, it's not always intercourse, it can be many different things, oral sex, manual, digital sex, and also just sensual activities like connecting through massage, through bathing together, through romantic things like that. And I think once people expand their definition of sexuality, it starts to be more fun and playful and feel less like an obligation.
Do you think women have a hard time still, or at least more, say in my age group, have a hard time wrapping their brains around things like masturbation or toys, or just doing playful little things because they haven't necessarily been exposed to that? Do you think that women are becoming receptive to that, or do you have to work with them for a while to help them become comfortable?
Well, it's certainly more accepted than it used to be. Over half of women in the US have used a sex toy. I do sometimes talk to women who don't have the desire to masturbate, or who feel who just can't get into it, who don't have sexual fantasies, or just don't have a lot of desire. Which, if someone really has no desire, there might be a medical reason. It might be related to a medication like birth control or antidepressants. And so it's important to look at that aspect. There are also just people who are asexual and have little interest in sex. So there's many different reasons this can happen. But if someone just has an aversion to masturbation, there might be some shame, some self-judgment over it, or there might be just a lack of understanding of what that person wants or what turns them on. There's very few people who have never had a sexual fantasy, or who have never had a positive sexual experience. So I help them revisit. Maybe they had fantasies when they were younger but shut down, or maybe they had one really good experience but don't know how to recreate it. So I kind of help them use those fantasies or memories as the building blocks for how to get back in touch with their bodies, or even if someone isn't comfortable with that, get back in touch with their bodies in smaller ways, like just putting lotion on their bodies and enjoying the sensation against their skin, or practicing mindfulness in the shower, enjoying the feeling of the water or the soap. And it may start there, and then it can build toward being more open to sexual pleasure.
Do you have so many different modalities in which you can help women? When I was looking at all the different services that you provide, and all your certifications and licenses, it's so impressive. But can you tell me about some of the other things, or the other modalities, such as psychotherapy, that you incorporate into your practice?
Yeah, so I practice as an associate marriage and family therapist and sex therapist, and I do many different things, such as in sex therapy, I often teach people mindfulness, which I kind of just explained, learning to be more aware of the sensations they're feeling in their daily life through eating, through going outside and noticing the wind against your skin. This is a practice that can help you get used to being more present in your body, so you can be more present in the bedroom. For couples, I often use a technique called sensate focus, where they have homework assignments between sessions, and they start off touching each other above the belt and just being very aware of what they're feeling and what kind of touch they enjoy giving and receiving. And then it gradually moves toward below the belt touching and then sex, but it helps sort of take some of the pressure off for people who are having issues with sexual dysfunction, to not have to see sensuality as something more expansive than sex. I also work with neurodiverse people with body image issues or disordered eating. I use a technique called dialectical behavior therapy, which also emphasizes mindfulness and has a set of worksheets on emotional regulation and distress tolerance and communication skills. Yeah, so if you are in California, I can offer that. Outside of California, I can do sex and love coaching.
And you can do that virtually for clients?
Yeah, it's actually all virtual.
It's just those state laws. I know I've looked through different things where you can do it virtual, but you have to be in this state for this and that. But so sex and love coaching, you can do all 50 states.
Yeah, coaching isn't regulated by the government. I think hopefully therapy regulations will catch up, like in the age of Zoom, because it's kind of pointless now, the state regulations, but that's how they do things.
So what drew you to where did you find yourself on this calling to make this the focus of your life, your career? Was there any specific thing that drew you to it, or is it just the path you found yourself on?
Yeah, I would say two different things. One is I dealt with a lot of body image insecurity and just a lot of body shame in general growing up, just from a lack of sex education from a variety of things. But I had an eating disorder around my ages 15 through 17, and when I was about 18, I had a sexual awakening that helped me to recover. It was just a very affirming experience with my body where it was my first sexual experience and it was just for my pleasure. My partner just went down on me and did not expect anything else, and it was this awakening of my body can be for me and my sexuality can be for me, which helps me among in addition to going to treatment, recover from my eating disorder. And I just wanted to help other people understand that sexuality can be something that's positive for women. And so that was around college that I started studying sex. One of my majors was gender and sexuality studies. And then when I got out, I started writing about sex and relationships. And then the other sort of formative experience was until I was 25, I had never had an orgasm with a partner. And because of my job as a sex writer, got to try all different forms of sexual exploration that helped me on that journey. One was taking a class about female orgasm. One was doing a hypnosis session where I was hypnotized to believe I could have the sex life I wanted. And it was mainly what I learned in the class and through just through other resources such as online sex education websites about the importance of female pleasure, and that you can the importance of clitoral stimulation, and that it's okay if that is the focus of your sex life more so than penetration, that it's okay to ask your partner for a specific kind of touch, to show them what you do when you masturbate, to give specific instructions. Women are often taught to be more passive in the bedroom and to be focused on pleasing your partner, or if they're pleasing you, to only devote a little bit of time for foreplay, and then intercourse is still the main focus. And so after I kind of uncracked the code on how to orgasm with any partner, then I wanted to teach other people. And so that was part of how I started sex education and coaching and sex therapy.
What would you say the percentage? I just saw a percentage, at least by penetration, that women. What percentage of women roughly do not have an orgasm by penetration?
There's so many statistics out there. The most comprehensive study, and it's kind of old, was in the book The Case of the Female Orgasm by Elizabeth Lloyd. And I believe about a quarter of women always orgasm through penetration, about a quarter never did, and the rest were they sometimes did, sometimes didn't. I think what's so confusing is people don't know how to define an orgasm. There's
I agree. I agree. I hear that all the time. It's so different.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy to measure a clitoral or penile orgasm. There are ways that something can be inserted into the vagina and they measure contractions. But what's coming out is that what women sometimes describe as a vaginal or G-spot orgasm doesn't always involve the same pattern of pelvic contractions. And I think it's a personal definition, actually. Sometimes there is a peak of pleasure that can come from penetration that doesn't feel the same as a clitoral orgasm, but feels just as satisfying. And so I think that we're still doing research on that, so women should define it however feels true to them.
Do you think we put too much pressure on ourselves to have this, it's obvious when a male orgasms. Do you think we put so much pressure on us to have these magical, explosive orgasms, and that in itself sort of hurts the experience?
Pressure definitely creates anxiety, which keeps you in your head during a sexual experience. At the same time, I don't think any woman should give up and just say, I'm just going to take orgasm off the table because it's too much pressure. What I advise most women is to figure out what works for them through masturbation, or whether that's through touching themselves or through toys or through something specific their partner can do. And if they really want to have an orgasm, just be comfortable saying, okay, now I'm going to take out my favorite toy or whatever it is. That's also a way to take off the pressure. If you're someone who struggles with orgasm, sometimes as an exercise, saying, okay, just as a rule, I'm not going to orgasm this time. Sometimes that actually works as reverse psychology, where then the person actually does like relax enough to orgasm. Or sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes that's helpful for both partners to just be less goal oriented and say, this time we're just going to like touch each other and neither of us is going to orgasm or is going to try to orgasm.
How do you deal with both male and female when you do couples, or both female, male, male? How receptive are the partners typically to helping the female, get through this or drop her walls or become very comfortable? Do you tend to see that people are very supportive of that, or is there a lot of stuff that you have to like get through in order to get to that spot?
They generally are very supportive. Most men really want to see their female partners have as much pleasure as they can give them. And if a man is coming to sex therapy, then already he's
True.
definitely wanting to be supportive. I think even when women come to me by themselves, usually their partner really wants to please them, but sometimes they don't know how. Sometimes the woman herself doesn't know how, so he's just frustrated that he can't figure it out himself. But I'd say in general, most men, they do want to please women, but sometimes they're afraid or shy to ask, because then it's almost like a wound to their ego that they didn't know how in the first place.
That's very true, and I could see how that would be a big issue. What brings you, the most joy in what you're doing now? Is it writing? Is it counseling? Is it, tell me what brings you the most joy when you wake up in the morning and you're excited about the day?
What brings me most joy? I have to think about this. My cats. That was the first thing that came to me. But that's not what you were asking. Well, I'm starting to work on a new book. I'm starting to put the pieces together. It's a book about what I call psychedelic orgasms.
Oh, well, I need to hear more.
It's about my exploration with psychedelics and how it opened up my sexual capacity. And like I was talking about with like how do we even define an orgasm, I think that is something that I thought about since I started exploring with psychedelics, because they open me up to things like touch-free orgasm and breast orgasm and different experiences like that, as well as what I talk about in Eve's Blessing as the orgasmic life, which is one where you are savoring every sensual pleasure in your life, even beyond the bedroom. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, I also really enjoy being like a expert quoted in the press and being interviewed for articles about sex and relationships. So journalists should reach out to me.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. The amount of articles, 9,000 plus articles that you've had published, not to mention, all the big names that I read off that you've either been quoted in or, mentioned. How did you even see that as a possibility when you started out on this journey?
Not really. I didn't even know if writing was something I could make my career. Back around 2015 was when I started, and I was actually working in tech marketing, and on the side, like on nights and weekends, I was just writing essays and submitting them. And thankfully, it took off just as I was laid off from my job, and I thought I'd get another day job and write on the side. But that was the media landscape's a little different now, but back then there were a lot of websites just creating a ton of content that they wanted to go viral, like listicles, news writing, so a lot of my articles, at one point I was writing like 10 to 15 pieces a day because it was just a bunch of news articles
Wow.
kind of regurgitated from other websites. Like I just have editors say, all right, cover this and send me a link to a website, and I'd like I
Wow.
don't do that anymore because it's very exhausting. But yeah, I actually, about a year in, I started making six figures as a freelance writer, which I definitely didn't know was possible. So I also coach writers on how to do that. But after maybe 5 years or so of doing that, I got kind of just kind of burnt out on that, and that's when I shifted more toward sex education and coaching and therapy, because I just wanted to work more with people, and not just behind my computer screen.
It's so impressive. I could see though where, it would get pretty tiresome to be churning out so many articles like that, and then just, craving a little bit more human interaction, and, wanting to get more like gratification immediately through how you're helping people versus just pumping out the articles. But I mean, it's impressive where you've been featured in. And what was your crowning glory? What was, besides your books, because that obviously those are your babies, but what was like your moment where you're like, wow, I was just quoted in this, or my article was published here?
Wait, sorry, ask that again.
Which moment of being published, or quoted, like what publication really, like, you felt like, oh my gosh, I've made it?
I think early on, I my first article in the Washington Post, I was surprised that I even was able to get published there because it was just a few months after I started writing, and I took a class with a writer named Sue Shapiro called Instant Gratification Takes Too Long. I'm not sure if she's still teaching them. It was in New York City, and it was sort of about just how to publish an essay in an online publication. So I wrote a piece about the body positivity movement and how, as an eating disorder survivor, I felt that it still failed me by continuing to objectify women, just objectifying a greater range of bodies. And so that was my first like big publication in a big newspaper. And then in 2020 was my first publication in the New York Times, and that had always been a goal of mine. And it was funny, it came out, it was in the wedding section, and it was about sexism in wedding marketing. It was inspired by my
Wow.
cousin actually saying that she was using, I forget what the service is, one of those websites where you post your wedding date and your photos and your registry and whatnot, and it was saying things like she was getting emails from them saying time to change your name, time to get your nails done, like kind of sexist stuff like that. And I talked to other women who felt that the wedding industry was behind the times in that way. And it came out actually while I was at my friend's wedding. And then I did two more pieces for the New York Times wedding section. One was on couples who create a new last name for themselves, and then one was on
That's
people
great.
who get married without a marriage proposal, or like how it's often the woman's idea and then the man actually like follows her. And yeah, so I would like to do more of those. And then, of course, like getting my first book published was probably like
Yeah,
another most proud moment.
I can't imagine. Now for everyone that's listening, where can they go to purchase your books?
Amazon or Barnes and Noble or the Polity website. The easiest way is probably Amazon. My two books are Subjectified, Becoming a Sexual Subject, and Eve's Blessing, Uncovering the Lost Pleasure Behind Female Pain. So you can search for those on Amazon.
And then if anyone wants to reach out for sex and love coaching, if they're not in the California area and that's the service that they would like, where would they go for that?
You can email me, SuzannahLWeiss@gmail.com, or just go to my website, www.suzannahweiss.com. There's a contact form. You'll probably see my name written out, but just in case, it's SUZANNAHWEISS.
All right, and socials, where can we follow you and keep up with what you're doing?
Twitter, Suzannah Weiss. Instagram, Suzannah Wise, WISE. TikTok, Sexistential Therapy, like sex and existential. I just started on TikTok, which is fun.
It's a bit of a beast. I'm still trying to figure it out.
It's funny, I started doing therapy and mental health content, and everyone just loves my cats, so I'm trying to combine them now and talk about the role of cats in mental health.
That's great. Well, I always ask my guests this completely non-serious question, but I have a playlist on Spotify, and I always ask my guests to contribute a song that basically they feel like could be the theme song for their journey, whether it's life, whether it's their experiences, whether it's their career, and then I put it on the playlist. So, and if you can't think of one off the bat, I'll get it from you later. But if there's one song you think that resonates, what would it be?
This is really funny. The first thing that came to my mind was at the beginning from Anastasia. I don't know why I remember it. Do you know that song?
I'm going to look it
Life
up.
is the road I want to keep going. Love is the river I want to keep going.
Ah,
It's
all
just a
right.
very positive song about believing in love and that everything will work out in the end. And that like the people you love will come back to you or always be in your life. It's just like a very childlike, positive song.
I love that. No, I will put it on the playlist. This playlist is so eclectic, and that actually fits with how eclectic it is. So that's perfect. I love that. Well, I want to thank you so much, Suzannah, for coming on, for taking time out of your day. Very excited to jump into that book. Love the title. Love the premise of what you did with that. And I hope that everyone does go and visit Suzannah's website, follows her on her socials, and for sure purchases her book. And I want to thank you again. And you can find this episode will be on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, all your streaming devices. But thank you again, Suzannah, for coming on. It was awesome.